Hello and welcome back to the Villa podcast. I'm here as always with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, we're back, and this is an exciting podcast because Aston Villa have advanced to the fifth round of the FA Cup for the first time in a decade, I do believe. And we're speaking. The draw has just happened right now, and we've got Cardiff City at home in the next round. But before we get into all that, mate, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Very well indeed. Just wanted to shout out everybody that left a comment under our last video, our first in a little while. Let's be kind to ourselves. And there's some really, really heartwarming stuff there, but I did want to cherry pick one out. I saw you went and replied a bunch. I was going to go and start replying to them. Sorry, you'd already beaten me to it. There was one that I think either slipped through the net, you chose not to reply to, or came after you did your little replying session. Did you see it?
I think
Bring it over to where you were lose about. It does look like you put on some weight. I was like,
to be fair, he's not wrong. I have, and I felt personally attacked, and I ran straight to the gym when I saw that comment.
it was a good Christmas. Thanks for asking. But yeah, maybe I'll take another break from doing podcasting after that. But no, on the whole, some really, really heartwarming stuff, which made it feel very, very lovely to be back. But that one did tickle me. But yeah, mate, good game. Very nice draw. As you say, last time we got through to this stage of the FA Cup, we went all the way to the final. So it's hoping we get a repeat, eh?
Absolutely, but hopefully not the same result because that was pretty grim. I mean, we would have been doing our GCSEs at that time, Dan, and probably about a year or two before we started doing Heart of the Whole in some capacity, not like the podcast. So yeah, it's been a long time, and it feels overdue, really, if we're being honest. Obviously, we had the Carabao Cup run just before COVID-19 hit, but I mean that feels like a fever dream, doesn't it, mate? Ali Samata scoring that diving header, that feels like it was so bloody long ago. But this is, we're putting together quite a nice FA Cup run here, and I hope it doesn't get sort of lost, and I don't think it will because I think obviously we were the sort of the final televised game the other day, so a lot of people watching, and there's obviously been a lot of discussion around Asensio and Rashford, and we'll come to that. But obviously we've defeated two Premier League teams up until this point, so obviously I wouldn't want to underestimate any opposition at all. But Cardiff will be a favourable draw, especially at home. A nice little reunion there with Callum Chambers and Anwar El Ghazi as well, mate, isn't there? So,
Have you seen Anwar's tweet?
no, I haven't. What do you say? What do you say?
He said, let me pull it up right now. Tears in my eyes type of stuff. Was praying for this draw. Can't wait to walk out at Villa Park with Cardiff and play in front of the Holte end again. Up the Villa.
I bloody love him. Do you know what? I was having this conversation, but by total chance. So the cup scheme works really weirdly. Right, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here, but stay with me, guys. The cup scheme only takes your money automatically for the Champions League games, and it doesn't do it for the cup games. So for both of the previous rounds, when it's come to sort of getting a ticket, it's me and my dad have sort of had a bit of a faux pas, not been able to get them in RC, still been able to get tickets, but for the West Ham game, we were sat right at the back of the North Stand, which is where we used to have a season ticket when we were in the Championship. And same thing happened with this game. So we're like, right, okay, we'll wherever there's a pair of tickets, we'll go because we'd sort of left it that late. Managed to get a pair in the upper hole in the sort of the newer safe standing bit. For context, our season tickets in the lower hole, L4, we're like pretty much in line with the 6 yard box and the right of the post when you look at it. And by total chance, I was sat next to Luke of Up the Villa podcast. Like his season ticket, he had his seat there, so it was really nice. And Luke shared some really nice. He sent me a text after our podcast the other day as well, but said some really kind words about us being back together. So I thought I'd give Luke a shout. But I was saying to Luke, like this, like with all of the signings that have sort of happened, and the players that are coming in, and the sort of the ruthless way players are departing as well. And we touched on it in the last podcast, Dan, with like Nedeljkovic, like almost instantly been sort of shown out in the revolving door, and Emi Buendia as well. There's not many players in this team that um I think like Villa's not the be all and end all to a lot of these players. The conversation kind of sparked around Duran leaving because as we went on in the last podcast, mate, like I'm glad he's gone, and I don't have any sort of like negative feelings towards him particularly, but and I don't expect players to come into our club and to just get it because ultimately it's a job. But Anwar's one of those players that has obviously been at the club in under such unique circumstances, and right now the only players who are there still from that period of time are obviously Guinea, Tyrone, and Jacob. Really, they're the only people that are around, and you know, I think there are others that get the club. I think Emmy gets the club. I think Esri and Ollie get the club and cash it. I think all these players get it, but nobody will get it more than Anwar El Ghazi, and it's really special. I'm really happy that this storyline's come through because if it wasn't for that absolute cockwomble Steven Gerrard, who knows? Anwar might still be around, and I'm not saying he would play a huge part or anything like that, but I know there's sort of no room for sentimentality in football, but like the FA Cup special for throwing us this narrative and giving Anwar El Ghazi that sort of swan song in front of the Holte end one last time.
Yeah, mate, it's such a good point to make. And I think the other side of it is, the journey that he's been on since, right? And the kind of the literal trials and tribulations that have kind of gone on with his life. Obviously, the departure from Mainz for kind of supporting pro-Palestinian causes on social and stuff like that. Kind of ended up out in the cold in the middle of nowhere, and then Cardiff kind of picked him up, and then he must have kind of had all sorts of doubts going through his mind after exiting the Bundesliga about would he play again, where would he play again, to make it back into English football, to a league that he knows very well. Like Championship must have felt great, and then to kind of have this full circle moment to play on back on the ground where I think he'd probably say he enjoyed some of the best days of his career. It's really, really nice, really, really nice for him, and I'm personally really happy. And so that's a really lovely kind of narrative arc that's woven into this draw, mate. And you're absolutely right that and it's interesting, like you're during such a difficult period for the club as well, right? Like a lot of these guys, like we've kind of said it before, like Elmo didn't want to leave so badly that he managed to work himself upstairs. Talk about falling upwards. How right? Never really discussed this. What? He's like an ambassador or something, I think. I would love
to retire. Did he ever officially retire?
That's such a good point.
I don't think he did. I'm pretty sure.
Looking around, I'm hoping around that Unai's like.
If Garcia gets injured, then he's in. It's ready.
We're not far off that. Well, that's good. That's a very good point. I always wonder. This is a real tangent. We will go back to the FA Cup draw, I promise. But what does his 9 to 5 look like? Do you know what I mean? Like Anwar El Ghazi walks into work on a Monday morning, and like I'm just like, what's that dude do all day? Anyway, that is a real tangent. No, you're absolutely right, mate. You're absolutely right. And I kind of hope that, to bring it full circle, these guys that we're kind of signing, we mentioned in the last podcast that these guys need a bit of a home, maybe an arm around the shoulder. Guys like Asensio, Rashford, Marlon. There's a very similar trajectory generally going on in their careers that we're looking to try and resurrect and set right. And you kind of hope that if we're able to do that, then you can kind of foster a genuine relationship between the club and like superstar level players. And so I think that's one thing that I really do hope comes out of this. And it would be like kind of very interesting to see kind of how those loans shape in a few months' time. But hey, mate, if Sunday night was anything to go by, I think we've got off on the right path.
Yeah, mate, we're winning it all, mate. We're winning it all. We don't want to get too carried away, but I think like the draw as a whole is obviously quite nice. I think in an ideal world, I think you get either one of a Newcastle versus either of the Manchester clubs, just guaranteed getting one out, or even both Manchester clubs up against each other. But uh, it's a pretty decent draw, especially Fulham Man U. I think that's quite an interesting tie, really. That it could go both ways, but I think I'd probably lean closer towards the Fulham side on that one, if I'm being completely honest. But saying that, would I want to play Fulham in the FA Cup? I'm not actually that sure. But it's almost customary that we get United in a cup competition. So it's weird that we've managed to go 2 rounds so far and not get them, mate. Because we must have played them about 4 times over the past 4 seasons, whether it's the Carabao or the FA Cup. But back to the game that's put us in this position, mate. This is probably one of the most complete 90-minute performances I think we've seen in the Unai Emery era. And I think obviously there's been a spell of a couple of months where we haven't been sitting here and sort of deliberating after each podcast, but I'm sure you felt the same after quite a few games over the sort of festive period. I was thinking, is this the worst we've been? And not in a like Emery out or like this is, but like I'm sort of looking at some of the performances and going, this is quite uncharacteristic of an Unai Emery side. And there's been injuries and there's been so many contributing factors. So it's more of an observation than a criticism. But this felt like everything that the club right now are setting out to achieve. It was in full motion. And my only gripe about this game is JJ. And people are probably thinking, Dan, what are you on about? He scored in the first minute. He was brilliant, this and that. He was. JJ's brilliant until he's not. That's a very it's a bit of a nonsense statement, but like he had 3 chances in this game that were identical. They were all identical, right? And he does the exact same thing every single time. Left-footed shot, straight at Sinski, and the only difference is he gets lucky with the very first one because goalkeeper's footing is just so wrong and he's mistimed the save. And JJ, to be fair to him as well, has hit it hard enough at him that he's managed to find the back of the net. Aside from that, I thought he was brilliant and I couldn't fault anyone.
It's a really interesting game, actually, because I too kind of came in at half time thinking like, yeah, I mean, wow, we're playing so well, and we were. I think it was Beyond Dublin actually on punditry that made a really good point that kind of really changed my perspective of it. He was kind of saying that actually Spurs are just so devoid of confidence and so passive at the moment that you don't actually have to do much to cut through them. Like, I don't think in the first half we were like, knock your socks off, amazing. But basically, as soon as we were able to string 3 or 4 forward passes together, we were inside the Spurs box. And, JJ had chances and, Leon Bailey had chances and Daniel Marlon put one over the bar. And we didn't really have to do a fat lot to get there. We weren't putting together really intricate sweeping passing moves like we were in the second half to kind of carve this team open. And I think, yeah, JJ, we get off to the start that we need. But I thought the second half, particularly when we brought the subs on and, Asensio and Rashford and like kind of entered the fold and like you saw those guys come in and really start to kind of sprinkle some of their magic. It was a very interesting kind of game. And, I think that Kinski mistake is kind of a whole package of exactly what Spurs are going through at the moment, just being completely devoid of confidence. Like if you watch his hands, like he doesn't really go to catch it or save it or like punch it away. He kind of does like a hybrid of all three and ends up just like kind of scooping it into the back of his own net somehow. And it's just kind of like symptomatic of a side of a goalkeeper that's just bearing so much pressure that when he gets what is by Premier League standards a pretty routine shot at him, he just like his brain just completely melted, bless him. But I will say that it did set us on the right path. I am slightly interested because we've done this quite a lot recently, and we've started really well in the first kind of 20 minutes of games. Not always got the opening goal, but did here. And I kind of think that it's a good thing. It absolutely offers us a safety blanket, but I do worry that we kind of lean on that a little bit too much. That maybe we would have been a little bit more clinical and execute. Like we kind of played for a lot of the game like a side that, like, the game probably, because of the game state and how much we were dominating the ball, and this goes for the second half as well, we had so much control over the game that we were basically, excuse me, but taking the piss after about 70 minutes. But it was still only 1-0. Do you know what I mean? And then obviously, like, not to fast forward to the end of the game, but Tell obviously gets that goal to make it 2-1, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, shit. I think suddenly it's like backs to the wall. And now, if you didn't watch that game and you're going through the scores from the fourth round, you see Villa 2-1 Spurs, and you think, oh, that was a close game, but it was anything but. And so yeah, we really needed to do. JJ could have easily. We really need to do, like, start putting these chances away. And I mean, I don't think anyone kind of at the club is looking at JJ to be, the clinical finisher that tucks these games away. We brought subs on in the second half, whose job it is to do that first and foremost. But he's a player that's like always on the fringes of a genuinely spectacular season. And it's probably in those kind of fine margins, as you say, about being able to diversify those finishes that would really set him apart and put him on the right path. And that is, I am kind of splitting hairs, I know. But yeah, we were playing with so much confidence. I almost think the scoreline kind of was forgotten about.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It genuinely could have been about 4, 5, 6-0 or 1. If we'll give Tell his goal, we'll give Tell his goal. But you see, I was worried, for the exact reason you say. We've been so soft, and we have this knack of conceding from the first shot on target. And I believe it's about 10, 15 minutes in, ball gets put in from Kulusevski, I think it is, across to Heung-min Son, and the goal is gaping in front of the Holte end, and you're thinking, oh my God, like we could have already been 3-0 up at this point, and this chance wouldn't have been such an issue. Emmy pulls off a wonder save, doesn't he, mate? He manages to get back across, spreads himself massively. And from that moment on, I knew we were going to win this game, because we had finally managed to not concede from the first shot on target. And I was so convinced we'd keep a clean sheet. And mate, in my mind, Tell scores in the 91st minute. It wasn't inside the 90, so in my head it's not counting, right? We've kept a clean sheet in this game. We've broken the curse, and it's a comprehensive win, right? I'm absolutely buzzing. Great 2-0 win from Villa here. But in all seriousness, it gave me a lot of confidence, because we've not done that in such a long time. And I think, when you look at, you talk about the game state and how much we dominated, but I think, what isn't perhaps being talked about as much as obviously the fact Esri goes off injured, and I'm not sure if we know yet the seriousness of that injury, but Garcia has a fantastic game in it right back. Lamar Bogard comes in at centre half. It's the third position now he's played this season, and he looked excellent, significantly more comfortable in at centre half than I think he's looked at times in right back, which doesn't surprise me considering he's a midfielder, and there's a little bit more structure and protection if you're playing centre half. There was so much that could have gone against us that in other games, we maybe would have let get to our heads. And again, maybe that does come back to what you're saying, mate, of Spurs are incredibly weak right now. But if we go back to September, October, whenever it was that we went to White Hart Lane and got done 4-0, I don't think that the performance we put in on that day at all justified the scoreline in that game. I do not think Villa were anywhere near as bad as they were in that game. So I know they're having a big injury crisis. I know there's almost an identity crisis as well, but you can only beat what's in front of you. And I think overall the performance was great, and Marlon as well. Obviously Ollie Watkins is injured again. We don't really know what's up with him. For the short term, Daniel Marlon up front is like the perfect stopgap. He presses in with the same intensity. He's clearly like got a wonderful footballing brain, knows when to go, when not to go. I don't think I've seen someone with as quick a feet as him at Villa Park in quite a while. He's absolutely rapid, but with the ball at his feet as well. There was a few chances that he had sort of in and around the box. He's trying to get shots away, control the ball, steal it off the defenders. And he really impressed me. Everyone did. But shout out to Garcia, shout out to Bogard, shout out to Marlon. I thought those two in particular were excellent. We said the other day, Garcia looked good against Wolves, but um, we've kind of seen here, and Spanish footballers are, of course, some of the most intelligent footballers of the lot. It's the culture, right? But we saw a footballer like this kid has a proper footballing brain. And I don't mean it in a patronizing way at all, but when you pluck somebody from the second division from the continent, it's safe to say you don't really know what you're going to get. And I would expect that, maybe still this season, there's going to be a few times where wingers have his number, but early signs are incredibly positive, in my opinion, mate, from Garcia.
I think, we got to kind of double the respect, really, because I don't suppose Emery ever thought that, this would be the bedding in like process for him. He's basically, when you consider his first games, being thrown in away at Wolves, which is, for anybody, we have a terrible record there. And so, for anybody associated with the club, that's a difficult task. And I thought that, we kind of said in the other pod that he was, unlucky to be pulled at half time. And then, to come on and play, on the same flank as Kim Min Son and Mattis Tel, who was playing out wide, like, and deal pretty well in a big FA Cup game is really, really encouraging, actually. And I think, for someone that's come in from, the second division in Spain to like make such a leap. And, there was, we were saying there was a lot of positive sentiment around him before he joined, but no, positive sides are really, really good, mate, and are really, really good. And I'm excited to see kind of more of him. I think it would be good if we could, get someone like Cash back into the fold and make it so that, he's not, we can kind of give him the minutes that we think is right for him and stuff like that. But yeah, considering he's been thrown right into the deep end straight away, it's hard not to be really impressed.
Is John McGinn back? I think John McGinn's back, isn't he?
Yeah, he was exceptional, particularly like, in that kind of deeper role, which we know previously hasn't necessarily been his best. I thought he was really, really good. And I also like in that Wolves defeat, you could really see how much like those. But they're a really interesting team actually, because when games like last night are the perfect environment for Villa. Home games where we can strut our stuff, we can play very fluid football, cut through teams, introduce different attacking options. Once games become a scrap, this Villa team just aren't set up to be combative. And you think of the West Ham game at home, you think of the Wolves game away, St James's Park again, like another example of grounds where we struggle to go. Those kind of tough physical encounters we really don't do well in, but those are arguably the games where you need John McGinn the most, and that he arguably plays best in. And so I think last night, when he can kind of dominate the midfield, and that kind of his battling and tenacity isn't something that's needed from the other 10 outfield players, it's really easy for him to kind of really stand out, particularly against a Spurs side that, with so many players out, have a bit of a soft underbelly with the midfield, and players that are a little bit out of confidence, a little bit uncomfortable. You saw like him kind of snapping into challenges and getting about. What an asset it was. I thought he was great, and you realise actually that he's a player that doesn't win too many man of the match awards for the Villa, doesn't score too many goals, get too many assists. But when he's out, you do really, really miss him, because it's not just Villa don't have another player like this. Like, I don't know where you find too many players like this. He's got such a unique skill set that, as soon as it's back in the team, it's hard not to notice it straight away.
Absolutely. And I want to give Leon Bailey a shout out. We love Leon Bailey on this podcast. And again, I thought that overall, I know he didn't play the whole game, but that was probably one of the best all-round performances I think we've seen from Leon Bailey in a long time. And it's fair to say he's not been at the peak. Like, we've seen peak Leon Bailey, and we've been trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle for just over a season now, and I believe it's still there firmly. I do. There is a wonderful player inside Leon Bailey, but his all-round game was absolutely phenomenal. Defensively impeccable. Makes one clearance, 2 interceptions, 3 tackles, wins 4 of his 10 ground duels. Really helped support Garcia in a lot of the game, 80% pass accuracy, 37 touches. He was busy. He was busy. Obviously, has the shot at Kinski as well. Um, I was really happy with Leon, and I think like we've seen McGinn in more of a. I know it's not his ideal position, but it's definitely more of a natural position in this game. We've not like Leon's competition all season has been Philogene, which clearly wasn't competition at all because we barely saw the kid, and John McGinn playing out wide right. If and when he was fit. I have never been a fan of John McGinn playing in that position. I just it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't complement John's skill set at all. And I think you need somebody with pace. I think you need somebody who's got really good technical ability, and that's Leon Bailey's role. But now, obviously, there's a bit of a shift around because Kamara's come in at centre back, so that frees up a spot in that sort of deeper lying midfield role, which obviously McGinn's filled. But with Asensio coming in, with Marlon coming in, there's now two other options, and you could even lump Cashy into it as well, right? Because if we've got a fully fit squad, we've seen Emery deploy Cash on the right wing at times, or sort of right midfield, give a bit more support to whoever plays at right back, whether that's Consa or whoever. Bailey has legit competition now, and I think this is where we will start to see the best of Bailey, because I don't want to. I'm certainly not accusing him of being complacent or not putting in the effort or whatever. I do not think that's the case whatsoever. But competition will naturally bring out the best in every single one of these players. And Rashford, he could play on the right. He could play on the right. There's now at least two players that Leon is looking over his shoulder thinking, bloody hell, I have to be better than these guys if I'm going to get any minutes and keep my spot in this team. And the same goes for JJ, right? I had my little rant about JJ at the start. I love JJ, so don't get it twisted. But I think that at the moment he's benefiting from the injury crisis, dare I call it that. And I think a fully fit squad right now, I don't think JJ makes the 11 at the moment. So, all of these signings that we've made are going to be net positives for your JJs, for your Leons, and, we'll hopefully draw the best out of them all.
I also think that Leon is like one of those players, and I think we've said this a lot on the pod, mate, where like once he's in a bad run of form, he finds it, I think, very difficult to play himself out of that. He just seems to kind of dig himself kind of deeper and deeper into like a kind of just a bad mental space where you can kind of see that actually you can really see like Marcus Rashford, right? This is a great example. Marcus Rashford came on last night and you can see he does everything with conviction. Every time he went at Pedro Porro, there's a clear like thought process, exactly, like he knows that he can pull this off. He knows that he's going to beat Pedro Porro. He's going to slide it through his legs and run on past it. And you can see almost instantly when a winger squares up a fullback, if they're in the right mental space, if they've got the confidence, the mojo, that they're going to beat that fullback. And you can see it in Leon sometimes when he's in a bad space, that he's just devoid of confidence. You don't really know, like he doesn't know which way he's going to go. Sometimes the ball kind of gets stuck under his feet. And then, that rightly or wrongly, the crowd gets on him back. And so he's not a player that you can kind of play through a bad patch, I don't think. I actually think if you kind of share the burden and you're not putting him out every week and being like, Leon, come on, turn it around, we depend on you. Maybe as a part of a wider rotation where, if he's having a bad game, he knows that guys can come off the bench and kind of help the team. And, he's not taking all of that onus. I think he's almost kind of the reverse of Ollie Watkins in that way, where he's a player that, when he has competition, doesn't necessarily like psychologically sit too well with him. He likes being the main man, feeling trusted. That's where we've always gotten the best out of Ollie Watkins. We've had two kind of experience now, one with Danny Ings, one with John Duran, and in both the form of Ollie Watkins really suffered. And so, yeah, two very different kind of psychological profiles there, I think. But I do think Leon will benefit actually from playing with guys like Marcus Rashford and having them come on and him coming on for them and stuff. We've often seen Leon be a real live wire when he's coming off the bench as well. And so, yeah, give him the chance to get a rest, get his head in the right space, and offer him minutes at the right times could be just what he needs.
Absolutely. And we've got to talk about Asensio, mate. I mean, Rashford as well. Rashford came on, was absolutely brilliant. All that intent, as you just said, mate. And there was the chance that he's running down the right wing, and he takes a bit of a heavy touch just at the top of the box when he's about to shoot, ends up sort of taking out Archie Gray, as Archie Gray makes a good tackle as well. That's the kind of chance where I'm like, if Ollie had that chance, like I know Rashford's not like 100% right, and obviously didn't manage to get the shot off and or score, but like a fit Marcus Rashford scores that because he's just absolutely clinical. I think Ollie would need to have that chance 3 or 4 times to maybe even hit the target. And that's the difference, right? Obviously they play like they're playing in different positions, but we've added a really clinical finisher to the roster. And Rashford, it wouldn't surprise me if he scores 10 goals, by the end of the season, all competitions. I think he's going to be really important. But like the class that he brought, the class that Asensio brought, mate, the little one-touch play with Morgs. And listen, I don't want to say that my interview with Morgs the other day inspired this performance, right? But I'm feeling pretty good about myself, mate. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good that after our chat, Morgan's gone. Do you know what? We've had some Morgan on Morgan action here. I'm gonna give the Villa boys a performance to talk about on the podcast. That would have been a wonder goal, wouldn't it, if that goes in
Oh,
from that little Asensio play. But I think what's exciting, right, is we sign players, and you look at someone like Morgan, right? He obviously has hit the ground running relatively quickly when you look at how long it takes people to adapt, right? But Asensio, obviously, he's a three-time Champions League winner, scored in a Champions League final. Like good players don't need time to settle. Good players just play good football, and that's what we've seen from Rashford. That's what we've seen from this cameo with Asensio, and it's it's really interesting, right? Because I think with all of these deals, as some of you guys pointed out in the comments as well, it's very easy to look at these and go, oh, this is risky. Oh, we're spending a lot of money on fees and wages. We've rolled the dice. We're putting everything on red here, mate. These guys are gonna fire us to Europe, and I'm more convinced of that now than ever. After just seeing 20 minutes of Marco Asensio, I'm convinced we're getting Champions League football again.
I think we really needed that fresh injection. And, I want to say I feel for Marco Asensio because I don't think that's technically true. But because the Rashford deal happened at the same time, the hype that would have existed around the Marco Asensio transfer to Villa at almost any other time would have like superseded almost anything. But because it happened amidst the Rashford news and the media vacuum that has been kind of happening around Marcus Rashford throughout January, meant that there was so many eyes on Marcus Rashford particularly, but I thought Asensio looked absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And when you start to kind of think of that front line and the different looks that we can give teams, middle, on the left, Marlon can move around, Asensio, I think it's important to say that as a metal like Morgan Rogers is genuinely amazing. I think has really turned a corner. I don't think he's quite getting the credit that he deserves kind of in the last 10 games or so. He's been far less wasteful with possession. Morgan Rogers kind of August through to October, November was kind of like he'll try three things, it'll come off once, but the other two are going to be incredibly frustrating. Now he's almost hitting the mark every single time. He looks great, but Asensio can give him a rest, which is not something that Morgan Rogers has played almost like every minute
Yeah.
of football this season. Like he always seems to be in the starting 11. He's playing no matter what the game. And I think you can really see how Asensio would work kind of covering Morgan in that kind of 10 role. And so, yeah, I think actually he's someone that skill set wise could match up quite nicely. You saw how well that it kind of worked together. And I think in terms of, giving Morgan a kind of hard earned rest. Marco is someone that can kind of do that too. And when as you say, adding Ollie and Leon, JJ, so many different looks that we can give teams, so many different ways that we can set up to hurt teams. We can really pick and choose that attack by our position. And I think it's great that we've got Ipswich at home next as well, like another home game to go into the game, but where we should get 3 points, we can hopefully get a few goals, is I think just what this side needs.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely. So, just top line notes. Villa are bloody massive. We're winning the FA Cup and we're going to qualify for the Champions League. That's the mood right now. You've heard it here first, guys. But let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Dan, it's great to be doing this again. It's great to be talking about Villa wins. It's always we don't mind talking about the losses, but it's always a lot more fun when there's a win. And yeah, really touched by all the kind comments and the one motivational one as well. I'm hanging that one up on my wall. I'm going to the gym after this podcast. But no, it's been really humbling. Like we do this for fun. We do this because we enjoy doing it, and it's nice to know that something that we've been doing for it's nearly like 8 years now, isn't it, mate? Is like a part of how you guys enjoy Villa and your sort of match day routines and sort of day-to-day life. So, yeah, Dan and I really appreciate the kind comments. Please do keep them coming. I'm sure it'll mean we post more frequently. So, yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't, and up the Villa.